Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is MrHurriicane, and with week 1 in the NFL approaching, I know many are ready to start diving into their own franchises in Madden 18. Today I wanted to break down my top 5, well, actually 6 teams that I recommend for franchise this year, and keep in mind the updated rosters are supposed to be out on Friday. So team number 1 I wanted to talk about is the Cleveland Browns. A popular team every year to pick in franchise because they're a team that's always needed so much work, but now more than ever, the Browns have players that you can really build around and still have so many draft picks that you're going to have in the future. You just might have your franchise quarterback in DeShone Kizer. We'll see what kind of ratings boost he gets in the updated rosters. With the Browns, you really just have to develop the offense. The players are there. On defense, there are some good ones, but you'll still need to add some more talent with those extra picks you have in your first draft class. The Browns have perhaps the youngest roster in the NFL. 31 players on this roster right here are either 24 years or younger, which makes them all younger than I am now. The Browns got a lot of talent in this past draft class, and you'll have no shortage of players to develop. And it's up to you if you think second-round quarterback DeShone Kizer is the franchise quarterback in Cleveland. Will that Cleveland quarterback jersey finally stop getting longer? With Kizer, you could build up an impressive tandem with him and Corey Coleman. You still have Josh Gordon on the roster, but Coleman is 23 and has more upside in terms of development. Now, unlike most rebuilding teams, the Browns actually have a very good offensive line led by future Hall of Famer Joe Thomas. You also have the 25-year-old Joel Bitonio, and they made 2 moves this past offseason to add J.C. Tretter and Kevin Zeitler. Right tackle is still a weakness, but 4 out of 5 is pretty solid. And it's not that much fun to draft offensive linemen in the first place, so you can worry about other positions. Myles Garrett should be a future superstar for your team. He has all the traits that you'd want already unlocked, and his ratings are already really high with superstar development. Then you have a couple of the more versatile defenders in the game with Jamie Collins, who can play inside linebacker. You can rush the passer with him. In the secondary, I'm not as confident in things, but you do have strong safety Jabril Peppers, another chess piece for you to play with. Elite speed for a strong safety, have to improve his cover ability, but he's going to man up against tight ends pretty well. He'll make tackles, perhaps contribute on special teams, and he shouldn't drop too many interceptions with that 75 catching. His tackling's already an 81. We already know Peppers is fast. He's the ideal strong safety to have in this game. And then with the future picks, you're going to have 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks after year 1. There's no reason why you can't turn this Browns team around with the talent they already have and that kind of draft capital. I'd recommend the Cleveland Browns to be a franchise team for anybody. Even if it's just if you want to play for a couple seasons, I think you could turn this team around relatively quickly. And if you're in it for the long haul, you could have a number of high-quality players on the team and actually have some tough contract decisions to make. Your top priorities to begin this franchise should be developing the arm of DeShone Kizer and getting his accuracy up to starting quarterback standards. Second, when it comes to the roster, you need to get the cornerbacks better, especially defending the likes of A.J. Green and Antonio Brown in that division. The Browns are a great team to pick this year for franchise, and I think if you pick them, you'll have a lot of fun with this team. But we have some more teams to get through in this video. And by the way, this is in no particular order. And I did not include my team I selected, the Chicago Bears, because I wanted to talk about some other teams. So let's go to the NFC now and focus on the San Francisco 49ers. This team has taken a massive fall since reaching the Super Bowl back in 2012. This roster needs a lot of work, and the reconstruction is underway. Unlike Cleveland, with San Francisco, you will absolutely want to draft a quarterback, unless you think you can develop C.J. Beathard, the rookie out of Iowa. One thing's for certain, Brian Hoyer is not going to be your answer. However, there are some potential answers on this roster. Carlos Hyde is in a contract year. I'd recommend keeping him around. He's a very versatile running back. Pierre Garçon's a good number 1 receiver, but there isn't much depth behind him. Defensively, they've selected defensive linemen in the first round the last 3 drafts. One of their big free agent splashes this past year? How about getting Kyle Juszczyk, the top fullback in the game? I recommend using him. He could be a short yardage running back for you, perhaps third down back. He can block really well and catch the football. 82 speed, that's really good for a fullback. But let's talk about some more important positions. At quarterback, Brian Hoyer will be your starter to begin, unless you decide to go with CJ Beathard. Hoyer has okay short accuracy, but he's going to miss a lot of throws for you. The 49ers do not have as much youth as the Browns, and their offensive line is nowhere near as good. Here are some players that you can build around, however. Solomon Thomas was their third overall selection this past year, making it 3 straight years they go first round D lineman. But the player you'll really want to develop is Rashard Robinson, who could become a #1 corner for you. He's only 22 years old. At wide receiver, I like Jeremy Curley and Pierre Garçon. You can stretch the field with Marquise Goodwin, but you'll still want to get another starting caliber receiver, especially because Garçon's already 31. Goodwin does not have great route running and his hands are only a 79, so you'll want to find some other players to develop. George Kittle is one of them at 23 years old. He already has the speed, 87, but his other abilities are raw, but you could definitely develop him into an intriguing tight end. The top player in this offense to build around is Carlos Hyde. I think Carlos is a do-it-all running back, and I recommend keeping him around after his contract expires after the first season. On the offensive line, Joe Staley and Zane Beadles are already in their 30s. The offensive line as a whole is not great. You'll need a lot of upgrades here. You might be able to develop Trent Brown, however, who already has 81 pass block. He's 24. You might be able to turn him into a good starting tackle. Defensively, Elvis Dumervil is going to be one of your better pass rushers, but you'll want to focus on developing these young defensive linemen. And if you play it right, you could end up with an elite level defensive line with Buckner, Solomon Thomas, and Eric Armstead. You should also be able to turn Reuben Foster into a superstar linebacker with the ratings where they're at and his quick development. In the secondary, outside of Rashard Robinson, I'm not a big fan of this roster. I think at strong safety, Eric Reed is a player you'll want to replace immediately. He's fast, hits hard, but that coverage and tackle are deal breakers. With the 49ers, you get 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks after your first year. I would recommend the 49ers to those who might want to be into franchise for more than just a couple seasons. You'll want time to get a starting quarterback and to develop some new playmakers on offense, and that's going to take some time. Keep in mind in the NFC, everything is going to be more difficult. There are just more competitive teams in the NFC that are going to be between you and a potential Super Bowl. In your division, you have to worry about the Seattle Seahawks first, then you have the LA Rams, who are at least going to play great defense, and you have the Arizona Cardinals. If you don't keep Carlos Hyde, you can turn over that entire offense in just a few years. Garçon by that point is going to be a lot older and less effective. You can really rebuild this offense if that's what you're into, while developing more of the defense with Bowman, Foster, those defensive linemen, and Rashard Robinson. Let's go on to Team 3. We're going back to the AFC with the Buffalo Bills. Here's a team that hasn't done much to excite their fan base about this upcoming season, as they've traded away Sammy Watkins and Ronald Darby and are stockpiling picks for next year's drafts. What are the Buffalo Bills going to do? Well, you got to make a decision first. Is Tyrod Taylor your quarterback? He has 2 years on his contract. Your top offensive playmakers are going to be LaShawn McCoy and Charles Clay. On defense, you have Marcel Darius, Jerry Hughes, pretty good defensive linemen, but you have to work on about everything else. Now, Tyrod's accuracies are not that great, and he's really out of time to develop into an upper tier quarterback, so it's up to you if he meets the standards right away. Regardless, you should draft somebody to potentially be the starting quarterback in the future. LaShawn McCoy is 29, but still very effective at running back, but you're probably going to be pretty one-dimensional with this team. Jordan Matthews is your #1 receiver. I like Matthews, but his hands have always been inconsistent. Charles Clay should be one of your top playmakers in year 1. Outside of Matthews, they already cut Philly Brown, so you're going to have Zay Jones probably being your #2 receiver, or Andre Holmes. On defense, Shaq Lawson still has a lot of work to do in terms of his development, but he's only 23 and has the time to get there. Jerry Hughes is 29 and will be your best pass rusher on the edge to open. And in the middle, Marcel Darius and Kyle Williams will make it tough for opposing ball carriers. You should also use Lorenzo Alexander quite a bit, but he's 34 years old, and he's probably not going to be in your long-term plans. They did take a first-round corner this past year in Tre'Davious White, and he can be a starting caliber corner for you, and he already has the quick development. Outside of him, that secondary needs to be rebuilt. The other corners I don't think are going to be starters for you. Micah Hyde might be a decent starting free safety, but there is so much work to do. At least you have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 2 third-round picks. Although we're not seeing that here in this current roster, so hopefully that is there in the upcoming one. Not sure if there were any AI trades that may have lost some picks when I simmed to make this video. But anyway, with the Buffalo Bills, you have a lot of work to do when you're competing in that AFC East, of course, against the defending champs, the New England Patriots. The team has a long way to go, but you should be able to use those extra draft picks to work on the rebuild. For me personally, I love to work on receiving cores and secondaries with my rebuilds, and that's exactly what this team offers. So if you like drafting receivers and developing corners, this is the perfect team for you to choose. Now, I wanted to combine 2 teams into this third spot basically because I think the rebuilds are kind of similar, although this one's a bigger project. The New York Jets, another team in that AFC East. Who is going to compete with these New England Patriots? We have the New York Jets here. They just traded away Sheldon Richardson, so that's going to be in the next roster update. They got a second-round pick in Jermaine Kearse in return, so just pretend he's on the roster right now. But Josh McCown is your quarterback, and on defense, I mean, you have Jamal Adams, and he was a highly touted player coming out of LSU. You also have good defensive linemen. Are you going to develop Christian Hackenberg? Probably not with that slow development. What is Josh McCown going to do for you? Well, his short accuracy is worse than Brian Hoyer, so I'm not expecting a whole lot. Bilal Powell is one of your running backs. I like Powell. You also have Matt Forte, so you might be able to run the football and focus on that in year 1. Now, he's going to miss some time, but Quincy Enunwa is a player you should try developing and building this offense around. He can be a big playmaker for you. You could also see what you could do with Robbie Anderson in his second year out of Temple, who can be a deep threat, has 82 catching. On the offensive line, be prepared to draft and develop new players. Defensively, Leonard Williams at least gives you a great building block. He and Muhammad Wilkerson are a great duo. They had Sheldon Richardson until he was dealt, so now you have to figure out how on earth you're going to get to the quarterback with this roster. Leonard Williams is your best bet, but on the edge, good luck in year 1. The Jets have more work to do than the other teams I talked about, and they have less picks to do it with. They only have 2 second-round picks as extras in this upcoming draft, and that'll be in the roster update, I assume, with the Sheldon Richardson trade that I couldn't get to go through in Madden. So your number 1 receiver is going to be Jermaine Kearse, fine player, 27 years old. Probably won't become a star, but he's going to be reliable, and he'll be at least a starting caliber player. In the secondary, the number 1 is Morris Claiborne. You got to get some new cornerbacks here in New York. You don't have to draft safeties, though. They took care of that this year. And Jamal Adams is not far from being a superstar caliber safety. As a matter of fact, he's pretty much there with 91 speed, his hit power, and his coverage ability. So obviously, this team is a big project. If you are in this for the long haul and you want a big franchise to go through many seasons, this is maybe the ideal team to select. You will make this team your own in no time. You don't have as many players to build around as you do with the Browns or with the 49ers even. The Bills have a lot of picks, but the Jets really don't. Meanwhile, as the Jets, you'd be competing with the Bills and all those picks they're going to be using. Let's go on to the next team now. We're going to really switch gears and talk about the Arizona Cardinals. This is a team that's really interesting for franchise. You could conceivably compete for a playoff spot in year 1. However, the difficulty actually ramps up after year 1 because you're probably a year away from Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald retiring. You will have some roster turnover there, but you have more star players on this team to build around than most that would be considered for franchise mode. Carson Palmer, maybe 1 year left, 2, depends on when he retires in game. Larry Fitzgerald, probably the same deal. As long as they're there, they should be effective. You also have the great 25-year-old David Johnson, one of the top running backs in the game, to run your offense through. And on defense, more star power. Patrick Peterson. He is one of the elite #1 cornerbacks in the game. You also get Tyrann Mathieu. His coverage isn't going to wow you, but he's at least versatile enough to play in the nickel as well. And along with him is Chandler Jones as your top pass rusher. Opposite him, you have Marcus Golden, who has turned into a very fine player himself. This team lacks depth, but at least they have 2 solid pass rushers. I think once you get away from these star players, the talent drops off significantly to where you have a lot of average starters and replacement level players. Jared Valdir at right tackle. These ratings might not wow you very much, but this is good enough to be the #7 tackle in the game. Right tackle, that is. He's your best offensive lineman. On defense, you have a couple young rookies you'll love developing in Hassan Reddick, the athletic linebacker, and Budda Baker. Find a place to play him because he's going to be really good. I'd play him at strong safety personally. Then there's Robert Kimdichie in his 2nd year, another player you can develop. Now, like I said, you could compete in year 1 with this roster. There is the star power on both sides. You can get turnovers, and you have the running game and a #1 receiver. How long are you going to have that #1 receiver, though? That's the question. I also think this team lacks depth, and a couple wrong injuries could really derail your season. Outside of Larry Fitzgerald, sure, you have the speedster John Brown, but no ideal replacement for Larry on the roster. I think you'll definitely want to address tight end in your drafting, and you'll also want to get someone to play cornerback alongside Patrick Peterson. I think this is a good team for somebody wanting to play franchise for maybe just a couple, maybe 3 seasons. Gives you time to compete in year 1, and then to build up another core, maybe replacing Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald, to give it another go. Now, there's one more team I want to talk about. This will be no surprise if you follow my live streams recently. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think any team in the league has upgraded their offense as much as the Buccaneers did last year. You always hear about the 3rd year being so big for quarterbacks. I don't see why the Buccaneers aren't getting more love right now. But in Madden, you could turn this team into a title contender very quickly. They have the championship offense in place, in my opinion. Offensive line could use some work, and defensively, there are some holes. But you should have a very high-scoring offense at least to begin. Jameis Winston has the likes of Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, and of course the rookie Chris Godwin, a player that I'm really excited to see. Also tight end O.J. Howard. I can't believe that he fell as far as he did in the draft. Now with Jameis, you have to work on his accuracy. He throws a lot of interceptions and he'll miss a lot of throws unless you get those accuracy ratings up. Good thing you have a player like Mike Evans who can erase some of those inaccurate throws with his large wingspan and 6'5" frame. Then you have Deshaun Jackson, whom I would consider to be the 2nd best deep threat in the last decade, only to Randy Moss ahead of him. And Chris Godwin gives you another receiver that is going to give defense fits. And who's going to cover O.J. Howard? I mean, seriously, he's fast. He's got that long list of traits already. O.J. Howard's floor is a top 10 tight end. His ceiling is, of course, at the very top. The offensive linemen, some solid players there, but you might want to address some spots. Defensively, I'm just concerned at how this team is going to rush the passer. Are William Golston, Robert Ayers, and Noah Spence going to be enough at the edge? We know Gerald McCoy is a force in the middle, and behind him you have the rangy Quan Alexander's turned into a tackle machine. You also have Levante David, but you want to keep him clean. He's not going to get off many blocks for you. He still has great speed and cover ability, and he and Alexander make up a very intriguing nickel linebacker duo. Also on defense, I think you'll want to focus on improving the secondary. Brent Grimes is already 34, and I'd make Vernon Hargreaves one of your focus players and put as much development into him as you can. At safety, you can try developing Justin Evans, and J.J. Wilcox is your strong safety. So the Buccaneers, I think, are a team that are perfect for those who want a short-term franchise. You could compete for the NFC South in year 1. And with a couple defensive additions, this roster could be scary top to bottom. One thing's for certain, you have the receivers to get it done. You have 2 tight ends that are also good receivers. This on paper should be one of the top offenses in the league this year. And they have the talent to make a franchise a lot of fun if you like high-scoring offenses and going for the big plays. Just remember to focus on Winston's accuracy so you can get the most out of these playmakers. And that wraps up the list here. I wanted to do a top 5, but I made it 6 teams because Buffalo and New York kind of seemed like it was too much, too similar to be 40% of the video. So I had to throw in the Bucs. There are other teams I love to talk about for franchise. I can make the case for so many other teams like the Eagles, Titans, and the Chargers. Other great options for you. But if you are wondering who your franchise team should be, perhaps this video helps answer that. Every team has their own set of challenges you'll have to overcome, and it really depends on what kind of challenges you're looking for, whether it's getting to improve the defense, the offense, do you want to draft a lot, do you not want to draft a lot, it all depends. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. Hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel for much more Madden 18 content and my upcoming franchise. And I'll see you all later. Have a great day.